Thank y'all so much for coming out tonight and spending your evening with me. I hope by the end of the night that you'll have lots more information to make a really good informed decision about dual enrollment at Motlow. With that being said, my name is Marla Rudd. I am the dual enrollment coordinator for Tullahoma High School, so I work with all the counselors here, as well as Ms. Kinsey, for dual enrollment to support your students and make sure that they are registered for their classes the way they need to be, and it just makes it a smooth process. Just a little bit about me so you know that I'm human just like every one of y'all. I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Martin Methodist College, now UT Southern, in elementary education. I've worked in the field of education for the last 16 years. I did attend Motlow, and I started working with Motlow this past March. I've lived in Lincoln County my whole life, so I'm not very far from you guys at all. Currently reside in Flintville. I have a husband of 12 years and a beautiful daughter of 8, and we love our 3 fur babies. So you may be thinking, what are the benefits of dual enrollment? It's less classes that students would take after high school graduation. It's cost efficient due to the dual enrollment grant or the middle college scholarship. Students are more likely to attend college after high school graduation. It better prepares students for college life, and it looks good on their college scholarship applications. So just to get started with dual enrollment, there are some requirements that we have to make sure students meet. The very first one that we look at is the high school GPA. If the high school GPA isn't where it needs to be, then we look at the ACT scores, and then we can look at the student taking an Accuplacer exam, and we're going to go into those in more detail in just a moment. In order to get started, students must talk with their high school counselor to let them know that they're interested in dual enrollment. So tonight is a good indicator that your high school counselor knows that you're interested, so that they can go ahead and make sure that your name is on their list to follow up with for either this summer or this fall for dual enrollment. High school counselors or designee, they determine if students are academically eligible to take dual enrollment courses at Motlow. And then once I have a list from the counselors, I'm able to double back and just verify eligibility of students based on their high school transcript, ACT scores, or that Accuplacer exam. So let's talk about that high school GPA. Students must have an overall high school GPA of at least 3.0 or higher to be eligible for dual enrollment. Now these are Motlow's guidelines. Tullahoma High School may have a higher GPA that your student has to meet. But for Motlow, for dual enrollment, a 3.0 overall GPA to get started. If they're wanting to take classes in English, humanities, social science, so your English classes, literature, psychology, sociology, histories, anything along those lines, students also have to have at least a 3.0 average in their high school English classes. So that 3.0 average overall, and then a 3.0 in their high school English classes. If they want to take math and science classes, we still need that 3.0 GPA overall, as well as that 3.0 GPA in their high school English classes. And then also a 3.0 or higher GPA in their high school math classes. And this is just to make sure that students are eligible and to make sure that they're going to be successful taking Motlow classes. If a student is wanting to take CTE classes, so mechatronics, business, agriculture, EMT classes, the GPA for that is 2.5. There's no average GPA for those class areas, just that 2.5 overall GPA. Again, students must consult with their high school counselor to get started for dual enrollment. Okay, so if the student's high school GPA isn't where it needs to be, so maybe they don't have that 3.0 overall or that 3.0 in English or math classes, we can look at the student's ACT scores. And what we're looking at there, if they're wanting to take those English, humanities, or social science classes, is at least the following: an 18 in English and a 19 in reading. And if they're wanting to take math or science classes, they need that 18 in English, the 19 in reading, as well as a 19 in math. So at least those starting off points for the ACT scores. If for some reason the GPA isn't where it needs to be and the ACT scores aren't where they need to be, the student can look at taking our Accuplacer exam on Motlow's campus, either virtually through the testing center or on site through the testing center. The student does have to at least take the ACT one time before they're eligible to take the AccuPlacer exam. So again, that ACT has to be taken at least once so we can see where those scores, and if they're not where they need to be, then the student can take the AccuPlacer exam. The good thing about the AccuPlacer exam is the student has the option to only take the area that they want to improve in. So say their ACT score for math wasn't a 19, maybe it was a 17 or an 18, so they're right there at that cusp, and they want to challenge that ACT score, they can take the AccuPlacer for just the math section, and they're not having to take the whole thing. So with that, students need at least a 250 score. The test is not timed, so they can take as long as they need. I know sometimes test anxiety is a real thing, and having a test that is timed can give lots of anxiety. So it is not timed. The student can take it up to 2 times, so maybe they don't do as well as they would hope the first time, they can take it again a second time. And like I mentioned, they can either test in all areas or just the area that they need to challenge. Do I have any freshmen in here? Okay, so for freshmen, in order to take classes, we do need an AccuPlacer exam on file, and the reason why is just to make sure that everyone is ready to take college level classes. So I will talk with the counselor about freshman students, and we will get more information to y'all about how to schedule that AccuPlacer exam and what all you need to do. So there is some paperwork that needs to be completed, and we're going to go through all of these in detail, but just to let you know, we have a Motlow admission application, a dual enrollment consent form that has 3 separate parts to it, the student, the parent, and the counselor. We also have to obtain the high school transcripts, and those come from the high school counselor. And then the dual enrollment grant application or the middle college scholarship application. And then if a student has taken any previous college classes at another institution, so TCAT or any other college institution, we need those transcripts on file, and those transcripts would come from the student. They would request it from that institution, and they can either email it to me or they can hand deliver it in a sealed envelope. So let's talk about the admission application. You will be sent out this PowerPoint, and all of these links in here you can click on so that they're easily accessible. This link here will take you directly to the admission application for you to get started. So like Ms. Kay said, go ahead and start it tonight, and if you can't, do it tomorrow. They've set deadlines that are hard and need to be met so that they're able to meet with students later on in this month in order to get everyone set up for dual enrollment for summer or fall. There are application deadlines, but Tullahoma High School's deadline is going to be a little bit more strenuous. So again, follow the deadline that Ms. Kay gave us. There's a handout in the packet titled How to Complete an Application for Dual Enrollment. That is going to step you step by step on how to complete this admission application. So if you have any questions, I would suggest looking back on it. It will take you through all the steps. The most important step is the very last one. The student needs to agree to the terms at the bottom of the page, or else the application will not be submitted. So again, agree to those terms on the very last page. It's a blue hyperlink, and then that application submits right after that. Like Ms. Kay said, it does take about 24 to 72 hours to process applications, and it really depends on how many applications were completed in a certain day. So if only 5 were completed, it's going to be closer to that 24-hour mark, but if I have 50 or more, it could be closer to that 72-hour mark. It takes a little bit of time for our secretary to process those applications. After the application is completed, the student will receive an email in the email that they put in their admission application. I would suggest using a personal email, not their Tullahoma High School email address. So a personal email address, if you do not have one, you can make one for free, but that personal email is going to come in handy. So they will receive an email. Sometimes it likes to go to your spam or your junk folder, so please check your inbox and your spam and junk folder to make sure you get that email. It will be automated on behalf of Motlow. Inside that email is going to be a welcome letter attached. That welcome letter will have your Motlow A number, which is how Motlow identifies you in our database, as well as your Motlow email address. I would suggest going ahead and getting familiar with checking that email. As you take classes at Motlow, your professors, the business office, anyone related to Motlow will be emailing you through that account instead of your personal account. So there are 3 steps on the letter. The very first thing is just reminding you to check with your counselor to make sure they're aware that you're interested in dual enrollment. And then there's a link that will tell you how to create your email address, your email account, and then how to log into the Motlow Hub. The Motlow Hub is where everything Motlow related is housed. You will have access to your Motlow email, you'll have access to My Motlow, which is our database that houses all of your classes, anything about the business office, everything is pretty much in My Motlow. There is a handout called How Do I Log Into the Motlow Hub in your packet, and it will tell you how to log in for the very first time. There are specific passwords that are temporary. Once you log in, it will then ask you to create a password that you're going to remember. I would suggest putting that password in your phone, the username and password in your phone, or writing it down so you always have it. If you were to lose that password, we do have an IT department that you can call, and they are able to help you reset the password, but you will need that Motlow A number. So it's important to keep that Motlow A number handy as well. It starts with an A and then at least 2 zeros behind it, and then some other numbers.
Ms. Marla?
Yes.
I'm sorry, if you guys did not get a hard packet, we will email that out to you. So don't stress if you don't have it right now. We will get it sent to you. Thank you.
All right, so once you get that welcome letter and you've clicked the link on how to complete the consent form, and you've logged into the Motlow Hub, you will then log into My Motlow. There is a handout in your packet as well called Dual Enrollment Information, and it will step you out how to complete the 3-part consent form process. The student starts it, so they complete the student section first. They enter their parent name and email address, just one parent, it doesn't have to be both. Just make sure that that email address for it is typed in correctly, and then they will also select their high school. Once the student has submitted their portion of the consent form, an email will automatically be sent to the parent email address as well as the high school counselor for them to complete their sections of that consent form. Again, parents, the email likes to sometimes go to the spam or junk folder, so if you don't receive it in your inbox, please check that folder as well. As soon as the student submits theirs, almost directly afterwards, you should receive yours in your inbox or your spam or junk folder. It comes pretty quickly. There are video tutorials if you need to watch a video on how to complete the consent form. This link here, you can click on it and it will take you directly to our video tutorial. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is the dual enrollment grant. Each student has to create a TSAC student portal account. This website here will take you directly to TSAC's database, so students can create an account and then complete the dual enrollment grant application. Once the student completes the application for the school year they're starting to take classes, it is good for the entire school year, so they don't have to complete it again. So if you're taking a fall 2024 class, the deadline for that dual enrollment grant is September 15th of 2024. However, I would suggest going ahead and doing it now, directly after you do the admission application, so you don't forget later on down the road. However, if you do forget, I will be there to remind you to make sure, because I don't want anyone to miss out on the opportunity for the dual enrollment grant funding. Now, if you take a summer class for 2024, you will complete the dual enrollment grant for 2023-24, so this school year, as well as 2024-25 for next school year. So the summer coming up is on this current school year's grant application, and fall will be on next year. So you'll do 2. If you're taking only fall 24 classes, then you only need to do the 24-25 dual enrollment grant application. So once the student has applied for the dual enrollment grant and they're starting to take their first classes as a dual enrollment student, they have to maintain at least a 2.0 or higher collegiate GPA. If a student's GPA were to drop below a 2.0 at Motlow, they would then lose the dual enrollment grant, and they're unable to receive it any future semesters. There's more important information that you can get from this website down at the bottom of the screen, and it will tell you all the things needed. I'm just giving you a snapshot of what the dual enrollment grant is. Again, if they want to continue taking dual enrollment classes, the counselor will approve that, but they still have to have at least a 3.0 high school GPA and those average GPAs for English and math in order to continue taking classes. The kicker is the student would then pay for those classes out of pocket because they would not be eligible for the dual enrollment grant. So that is something that you would want to talk with your parents and the counselors about to see if that's the next route that you want to take if you want to continue taking dual enrollment classes. All right, the only other eligibility requirement for the dual enrollment grant is that students have to be a Tennessee resident for at least the last 12 consecutive months. If for some reason you and your family have previously moved here just a couple of months ago, we do have a Tennessee residency form that can be completed for students to prove that they are a Tennessee resident currently. That application will be, special instructions for that application will be sent as an as-needed basis. But that is available. Parents can submit the appropriate documentation. Usually it's like a driver's license or some type of way to show that they are living at a current address. Once that's in place and the business office has accepted it, then usually the student is then marked as an in-state student and they're eligible for that dual enrollment grant funding. So let's talk a little bit about what the dual enrollment grant offers. So the dual enrollment grant covers 10 classes, the tuition for 10 classes. Courses 1 through 5, the tuition is completely covered by the dual enrollment grant. Students are responsible for any textbooks or extra fees. So we do have a science fee and a math fee. We have science and math labs. Those are the responsibility of the student and family. For courses 6 through 10, the dual enrollment grant gives $100 per credit hour. So if your student is taking a 3 credit hour class, which is the typical amount of credit hours that our courses are, they will receive $300 for that class and for each class that they're taking, that's courses 6 through 10. Again, those textbooks and any fees are the responsibility of the student and family. After those 10 courses, the dual enrollment grant has been exhausted and there's no other funding available for high school students. Right now, the dual enrollment grant is only eligible for current or rising juniors and seniors. There's no funding right now for any freshmen or sophomores. So freshmen and sophomores, if you're wanting to take a class at this time, those classes would be paid for out of pocket. All right, moving forward, we do have the option for students to complete their associate's degree as they're still working on their high school graduation requirements. Those students are typically called middle college students, and we usually have 100 plus students every year that graduate with their associate's degree. Students who are interested in pursuing the middle college scholarship really need to consult with their counselor to make sure that's going to be a good option for them here at Tullahoma High School, as well as making sure that they have the drive and the determination to complete that program, because it is rigorous. Not only are they working on their high school requirements, but they're also working on associate's degree level requirements as well. So with that being said, just like you would do for the dual enrollment grant, students who want to pursue the middle college scholarship also have to create a TSAC student portal account, that same website that we looked at earlier, and they complete the middle college scholarship application. This is a one-time process for students, so it is only available for students who will be juniors. So if a student does not complete this application by September 1st of their junior year in high school, they're not eligible to complete it for any future semesters. And the reason why is because it takes every bit of the 2 semesters of their junior year and the 2 semesters of their senior year to complete an associate's degree path. So again, September 1st of the student's junior year in high school is when the middle college scholarship has to be completed. Make sure I didn't forget anything, sorry.
Can I ask a question about that,
Sure.
since we're on that part? If the student is planning to pursue an associate's, let's just say that, like, in the middle of their senior year, they realize it's not going to play out, does that impact them? Or how does that work if they don't finish?
It doesn't. They will not owe any funding back. We would just encourage them to, along the way, encourage them to try to complete it. But if they realize that, hey, this isn't for them, then it's okay if they were to stop. Typically, we have students who, when they stop the middle college scholarship, it's because their GPA has dropped and they are no longer eligible for it. I don't think I've had any students who have dropped it because they weren't able to handle it or whatnot. But that would just be an as-needed basis, and they can, reach out to me, talk with me, and we'd work it out at that point. So for the middle college scholarship, I went too far, I'm so sorry. Students have to maintain a 3.0 or higher collegiate level GPA. If a student were to drop below 3.0 for Motlow classes, they could still pick up the dual enrollment grant after that, as long as their Motlow GPA is at least a 2.0 or higher. So they wouldn't lose out on funding altogether. They would just lose the middle college scholarship, which would make them no longer a middle college student. They would then roll over into a dual enrollment student, where they're just taking a few classes each semester for dual enrollment classes. For the middle college scholarship, students have to take at least 12 credit hours each fall and spring semester. That is a full load at Motlow, so 12 credit hours typically is about 4 classes. A lot of those classes can count towards high school graduation requirements as well. So if you're taking English 1010 at Motlow, that's also going to count as a Tullahoma High School graduation English credit as well. So you may think, oh my goodness, I have all of these classes for Tullahoma plus all of these for Motlow, but a lot of them are interchangeable, and then you get double credit at both places. There is a link here as well that you're welcome to look at once you get the PowerPoint that tells you all things middle college. Again, I'm just giving you the snapshot of middle college. The same with the dual enrollment grant. Students have to be a Tennessee resident for those 12 consecutive months. If not, they would complete that Tennessee residency form that I mentioned earlier. So let's talk a little bit about what the middle college scholarship offers. So it gives the students $2,000 per fall and spring semester. It does not cover summer semesters. The student is responsible for any remaining tuition. So what I've noticed is once they get the $2,000, it depends on how many credit hours the student is taking. Typically, it could be anywhere between $200 and $300 that's remaining. Again, that just really depends on the credit hours that the student is taking. If they're taking more 4 credit hour classes because that's the degree path that they've chosen, and those classes are higher credit levels, then obviously that remaining tuition is probably going to be a little bit higher. Students, just like the dual enrollment grant, are responsible for any textbooks or any other fees. So again, those science lab and math lab fees, and anything else that may come up that goes along with middle college. This is available, like I mentioned earlier, to juniors. So again, you complete this application September 1st of your junior year in high school. I'm going to throw a wrench in the plan here a minute. So if a student is wanting to be middle college, they have the option to use the dual enrollment grant the summer semester between their sophomore and junior year of high school. I would recommend not taking any more than 2 classes in a summer semester because our summer semesters are more condensed. They're 2 months versus a full semester, which is 4 months roughly. So the student has the option to take summer classes again between their sophomore and junior year, and the dual enrollment grant will cover that. Once the student is under the middle college scholarship, that fall semester of their junior year, the middle college scholarship takes over and they're no longer eligible for the dual enrollment grant unless they lose it due to their GPA dropping or a situation like Ms. Kinsey mentioned earlier. Again, that would be on an as-needed basis, depending upon the student and the situation that's happening. Let's see. Lastly, we talked about previous college transcripts. So if a student has taken a TCAT class or another class, I know Ms. Kay mentioned MTSU courses in those institutions, we need those transcripts in our database, and that comes from the student or you as the parent. So again, you would contact that institution, request your transcripts from them, an official copy, if at all possible, and then submit those transcripts to me so that I can then upload them into our database. If the parents are a Tennessee State employee, we do have a waiver that can be completed. Actually, your employer has a waiver that can be completed for tuition discounts. If your employer is unable to give you that form, I can get it from our business office to give to you. There are 3 different ways that that form can be submitted. Either by mail to Motlow's business office, email that's on the screen, or turn it in person at the business office on the Moore County campus. So this is handy when the student has any remaining tuition. It's going to take that discount off of the tuition, so it's a little bit less that you have to pay for that tuition for that semester. You may be thinking, what classes are the most popular for dual enrollment? So English 1010 and 1020, which is our English composition classes, History 2010 and 2020, Early and Modern U.S. History, Math 1010, which is Math for General Studies. We have Statistics, Pre-Calculus Algebra, American Government, Speech, Sociology, Psychology, Music, and Art. And those are just the first ones that came to mind. There are other classes that are available for students to take, but these are just the most popular that our high school students do take at Motlow. So Motlow classes are part of a student's permanent college transcript. Classes count towards high school credits and college credits. Classes operate on Motlow's schedule and calendar, not Tullahoma High School's calendar. So the student will need to be able to move back and forth between both calendars and making sure they're able to keep up with both. Our fall break and spring breaks may not line up with Tullahoma High School's breaks. Our Christmas break may not line up the same as well, so it's important that you're paying attention to both calendars. Classes are undergraduate level, taught by college instructors and professors, and expectations in these classes may be a little bit higher than classes here at Tullahoma Head Start. I keep saying Head Start, I used to work there, I'm so sorry, high school. Old habits. Oftentimes deadlines for these classes are non-negotiable. So it's important that the student is communicating with their instructor or their professor. The best way to communicate is through email, so that there's a paper trail that the student has been contacting their instructor or professor, but just make sure that they are communicating. If there's no communication, the instructor or professor thinks that the student doesn't care for the class, and they may not be as willing to work with the student. And we definitely want y'all to be successful in your classes. So it's just super important to build those relationships. Students have the same access to all the perks at Motlow that traditional students have. So free tutoring, counseling, library services, any events, concerts, plays, ball games. We do have student IDs that the students can go to our library and get a student ID so that they can get into these games and these events. So again, those perks are nice to have. So if a student takes a class on campus, it's best if a student were to sit closer to the front of the class, pay attention, ask questions, and get to know their instructor or their professor. She or he can be their biggest advocate, reference, and tutor. I look back on my years, many years ago in college, and I still stay in contact with a bunch of my professors. They've even written me reference letters. So the better relationship you gain, the better that your future will be. They'll be able to advocate for you even when you're in another class that's not theirs. Accommodations in classrooms are available for dual enrollment students, and we have a disability services office that students can contact to get those services started. Students who are attending another institution after high school graduation, so maybe they're not choosing to come back to Motlow, they will need to request their transcripts through Motlow's online system. That's not something that I'm able to provide them with. So they will request that, and then they have the option to have it mailed to them or have it emailed to them. And they have the option to request a unofficial and an official copy. Typically, if they're going to another institution, that institution wants an official official college transcript from Motlow. Our online classes are available through that Motlow hub that I talked about. It's called D2L, and that's where everything for that class will be housed. So you log into the Motlow hub, and then you click on D2L, and then you will see little boxes for all of your classes. So if you're taking 2 or 3 classes, whatever it may be, you're going to have 2 or 3 boxes. Each class will be in its own separate box. Inside that box will have everything you need to know about your class. It's going to have your syllabus. It will have, inside that syllabus will have your instructor, your professor's information, contact information, anything you need to know about that class. It will talk about how the grading system works, assignments, quizzes, all the information. So I suggest when you start taking your first class that you read that syllabus the very first day so that you know how that class is going to go. And at that time you can determine, hey, this may not be the class for me, or I think I can handle this. But again, that's going to be very important information for students to have. I did talk about communication with instructors or professors. That usually happens through the D2L platform. There is a function in D2L that students will use, and that's typically how our students email their professors. There are video tutorials about how D2L works, so submitting an assignment, setting up your calendar in D2L, completing a quiz, making a portfolio can be found at this link on the screen that you'll have when you get this PowerPoint. So dropping classes, and when I'm finished with this slide, I'm going to let Ms. Kay take over and talk just a little bit if she needs to. Motlow does have a grace period for students to drop classes without record or penalty. However, Tullahoma High School has a more stringent policy for dropping classes that students must follow, and that's what Ms. Kay is going to talk about here in just a minute. Dual enrollment coordinators, such as myself, will not drop a student from a class without approval from the high school counselor. And the reason why is because I do not want to mess with anyone's high school graduation requirements. So if you're taking English 1010 and you drop it or want to drop it, that's going to mess with your high school graduation requirements. And that's really important to make sure that the student graduates high school on time, which is our main priority. We want students to be able to graduate high school on time. We do not want these dual enrollment classes to interfere with that. So again, I will not drop any student without the approval from their counselor. If a student were to drop a class after the grace period, Motlow's grace period, for whatever reason, it has to be approved by the Tullahoma High School counselor. They should not drop themselves. Students should always be dropped by myself or another dual enrollment coordinator. They will have a W for withdrawal on their transcript, and there's a penalty that has to be paid. So the first option is the student or family pays 75% of that tuition for the class, or they let the dual enrollment grant pay for the class, which means that they're wasting a class that the dual enrollment grant would cover.
Okay. We do not have very many students who feel the need to drop a college class once they get enrolled, so this is generally not a problem, but sometimes we do. And when that happens, we have to be very careful of what we do with that student next. In the spring, it's not so much of an issue. In the summer, obviously, it's not an issue at all. But in the fall, Motlow starts 3 to 4 weeks after we do. So if you decide that you want to drop a class because you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I really can't handle that, we have to drop you into another class that's already a month ahead of where you are. You have to pick up an entire month's worth of work where we drop you in at. We cannot continue to allow students to have an open block if they are no longer a Motlow student. So with that being said, yes, Motlow has a way for you to recoup money or anything like that so it doesn't get messed up on your transcripts. But in Tullahoma, if you were dropping a class, in order for us to drop it and place you in the proper place, you have 3 days from the time classes start at Motlow to make that decision. 3 days. So please make sure, and one of the biggest tests of whether or not you can handle this type of information is the application process.
So dropping classes continued. In order for students to remain in good standing with the financial institution that they plan to go to after Motlow, they do have to have a 67% completion rate while they're taking classes at Motlow. A completion rate is either they dropped a class after that grace period or they failed a class. That's what would affect the completion rate. So for example, if a student takes one dual enrollment class at Motlow and they were to drop it after the grace period, their completion rate, or they were to fail it, their completion rate would be a 0%. If a student were taking up to 3 classes and they dropped one after the grace period or they failed one, that drops their completion rate to a 66%. So with that being said, it could affect HOPE dollars or any other financial aid or scholarship opportunities at the next institution that the student goes to. It will not affect the Tennessee Promise dollars. Students, if that is a situation, you feel yourself failing a class or you've dropped a class and you need more information, I'll gladly talk with you. And if I don't know the answers, I'll get with our financial aid office to get answers to you or direct you to the financial aid office, and hopefully that they can answer some questions for you. You also would reach out to the institution that you plan to transfer to after Motlow and ask them, because they will be able to answer questions for their institution. We can answer questions for Motlow, but their institution will answer their questions. So just a little bit of terminology. A credit hour is just the assigned number of credits for that class. I did say that the majority of our classes are 3 credit hours, but we do have some 1 and 2 credit hour classes along with 4 and 5 credit hour classes. Science classes and upper level math classes are typically 4 or 5 credit hours. We have aerobic walking, which is 1 credit hour. And then just a few here and there that are 2, and possibly a 6 credit hour class, maybe if it has an extra lab attached to it. A prerequisite is a course that has to be completed before moving to another course above it. So English 1010 has to be completed before the student can go into English 1020, and that means completed and passed. So if a student makes an F, unfortunately, they can't move into English 1020 because they didn't pass English 1010. If anyone is uncertain about what prerequisites there are, I'm here to help. I can look those up and let you know. That's no issue at all. So semester hours for us are different than semester hours here at Tullahoma High School. Our fall semester is roughly the end of August to the beginning of December. Our spring semester is the middle January to the beginning of May. And then our summer semester is end of May until the 1st of August, around the 1st of August. So again, that summer semester is very condensed. That's why I suggest only taking 2 or 1 class in the summer, because it can be overwhelming with how rigorous it is in the summer months. The syllabus I talked about earlier, it is a super important document that students should read the very first day of class. That will also be another indicator, like Ms. Kay said, to let them know if they'll be able to handle that class. It will have all things that class, the student would need to know about that class. Super, super, super important for the student to read. We talked about drop in the grace period, so I'll skip over that. Program of study is the classes students must take before receiving their associate's degree. So that is that will basically be a term for our middle college students who are working toward that associate's degree at the same time they're in high school. And then the associate's degree is a degree earned after completion of a program of study. And it just depends on what the student wants to go into as their field when they become an adult. There are lots of programs of study that students can choose from. It's not just one. We have a program finder that there's a link for in this PowerPoint that students can use to search the different programs of study to see what's going to interest them if they don't know already. Some students do, and some students it takes a little bit longer for them to decide what they want to do the rest of their lives. DE is dual enrollment. So if I'm emailing you, I'll often use DE for dual enrollment, DEG for dual enrollment grant, and MCS for middle college scholarship. And then lastly, here's my contact information. Feel free to take a picture of this, but you will get a copy of this slideshow. Thank you. You will get a copy of this PowerPoint. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about dual enrollment in general. But again, the first step to start dual enrollment is talking to the high school counselor. So make sure you're talking to your counselor, letting them know you're interested in dual enrollment, and we will get everything going from there. Are there any questions?
Question is probably a silly one.
No.
My sophomore is already in dual enrollment,
Uh-huh.
so do we have to do the application again?
If he's currently taking a class now, no.
Okay. so
Yep,
we don't have
he's
to do
good.
that application.
It's just, the applications are for first-time dual enrollment students or a student who has skipped a semester. So if a student took a fall class, but they're not taking a spring class this semester, they would need to do an application if they plan to take a class in summer or fall. So if they skip that, then they would need to do a new application.
But yes, the grant.
I'm sorry?
But yes, she needs to do the grant for next year. right?
Yeah, she will do the grant. I'm sorry, was that the application you were talking about?
No.
Okay, yeah, so so with the grant application, if you're taking a class for fall of '24, you complete that grant application by September 15th, hopefully sooner than that. I would do it as soon as you do your admission application, just to get it out of the way and get it done, because it is active and live on the website, so you can do it now. It is complete for that whole school year, so it will count for fall of '24, spring of '25, and summer of '25. Okay, if you're planning to take your first class summer of '24, you need to complete the dual enrollment grant application for this school year, 23-24, by May 15th. That is the cutoff from TSAC, not Motlow. That's a TSAC deadline. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out, email, call. I do not mind to answer any questions that you think of later on. Great questions, thank you.